Hello guys, in today's video we're going to be going over the top 10 things that you can do to improve your gameplay in War Thunder or overall experience. Whether you're a new or older player, I would recommend sticking around and seeing these 10 things that you can do. Now, a lot of these are going to be familiar for many of you guys that have been playing for a while and have grinded up to top tier. These are also just include some things that I've learned along the way that have really just helped me out, whether that be through settings or mindset or just overall playing the game. So the first thing that we're going to be going over is aim sensitivity. Now, a lot of people don't actually know this. I've talked with a lot of people that are newer to the game. It's one of those things that you tend to figure out when you've started playing for a while, but aim sensitivity is a setting that allows you to adjust how sensitive your aiming reticle is, right? So if it ever feels like you're moving along a grid, or when you're aiming and trying to shoot somebody who's really far away and it's really hard to hit those weak points, well, changing the setting can make that a lot easier for yourself. Now, you can locate this setting by going underneath controls and then selecting the option up at the top that says common, then moving down to view controls, and it should be right there, aim sensitivity. Now, a lot of people will play around on 5% or higher. Personally, I like 15%, but I would recommend playing around with this setting and seeing what is most comfortable with you, as it does affect the turret rotation speed. So if you put it down too low, and let's say you don't turn the DPI up on your mouse, well, you're gonna have a tough time. So just pick what feels comfortable, but also allows you to hit those weak points easier. Moving into tip number 2, that's going to be lineups. Now, this one may be pretty obvious to some of you, but a lot of people don't have proper lineup setups or just kind of neglect certain areas of their lineup, whether that be vehicle types. Now, it's important to have a light vehicle like the HSTVL for scouting, or some sort of CAS so that you can bomb the enemy, and a mix of main battle tanks or heavy tanks or medium tanks. All of these kind of fit the same area, because at top tier, main battle tanks act as your medium or heavy vehicles. Now, anti-air systems. It's important to have one that's at the appropriate BR that you're playing at, as it's important to have some form of anti-air that allows you to shoot down enemy CAS so you can support your teammates in this sense. Now, I know these things may differ depending on what BR you're at or what nation you're playing, such as Israel currently, after the update will, but currently does not have anything good for the top ranks of the nation when it comes to anti-air systems. But it's important to note that you always want to have a mix of vehicles. So if they're talking about low tier, let's say 5.7, you want to have a mix of, like, let's say for Russia, T-34, 85s, you want to have KV-1s, KV-1Ss, stuff of that nature, just a mix of different vehicle classes so that you don't have to worry about whether you have something that can handle what you're engaging. And this is also not going to be applicable at top tier, but for mid tiers or low tiers, tank destroyers are also a very valuable vehicle to bring into your lineup so that you're able to shoot vehicles that may have a bunch of armor and you can penetrate right through the front of them relatively easy. Moving into tip number 3, we're going to be talking about how much ammo you should bring into battle. Now, a lot of new players will get carried away and bring maximum ammunition, because if you haven't played War Thunder before, bringing more ammo doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing. Now, it doesn't slow you down in a sense, but it makes you explode a lot easier given you have a lot more ammo in the vehicle. And ammo is not always stowed in the same exact space. So you have something called a first stage ammo stowage, which is generally what I bring when I'm in a battle, right? I'll load up however many shells are in there. So if we look here at the Leopard 2A7, for example, we can see there is 15 shells in the first stowage. Now, it's not going to punish you if you bring a few more than that, but as we can see, the other ammunition is stored in the front lower plate, meaning if I get shot there and I have too much ammo there, it increases the risk of my tank exploding and having the ammo cook off. Now, I don't see an issue with bringing, let's say, 1 or 2 shells over that, as I personally like to bring 17 shells with my Leopard 2A7, as I feel that that's a good number and it still doesn't increase the chance of me getting ammo racked in the front very significantly, right? So it's just an important thing to watch for, and you can use the X-ray here, as you've seen on screen, on any of the vehicles in game, and you can see where their first stage ammo racks are simply by hovering over the ammo, and it'll say first stage ammo stowage if it is, and if not, then you know that that's where any ammunition after the number of the first stage goes to when it's being stored. Moving into tip number 4, we're going to be taking a look at reload rate. And what do I mean by that in a general sense? Well, I'm not talking about focusing on a specific vehicle, although it is good to know the reload rate of your vehicle. I'm talking about knowing the reload rate of all the vehicles at the BR you actively play at. Now, this may sound overwhelming, and what you can do at first is just look at the reload rate of vehicles that you consistently see. So if you play America, you're most likely going to see Russian vehicles, so knowing the reload rate of those vehicles is very important. Plus, up at top tier, a lot of the reload rates are very consistent across the board, a lot of them being at 5 seconds, such as the Merkava or the Abrams and Leclerc, but some of them are much faster, like this one here on the TKX prototype. This is just a flat rate across the board for most Japanese vehicles, being at a 4-second reload, which is the fastest one up at top tier, which gives you an advantage in an engagement where you know that you can shoot first and it's not as bad of a consequence as if you had a very long reload such as one of the Leopards, right? So this is just overall really useful to know. So you can say, hey, I shot right before this guy, he shot me back. How fast is his reload? Do I need to get out of the way, or can I sit here and put the finishing shot into him, right? So it just helps in that sense, and it keeps me from dying a lot of the time. And I've just kind of noticed that that's something that I personally do. I don't see any other YouTubers talking about this, but again, I think it's very useful to know. Moving into tip number 5, and this one's going to specifically be targeted towards new players, but don't make the mistake of buying premium vehicles for a nation that you don't have the equivalent BR in. So let's say you want to buy a top tier premium for a said nation, right? Russia is a good example of one where you can buy a premium lineup just because there's so many of them here to choose, right? But not everybody is a big Giga Chad that's going to spend an absurd amount of money on the game right off rip. Instead, most of your lineups are going to probably look like this one right here, where instead of having a whole bunch of vehicles at the same BR, you have let's say a Ram Seagal, a 10.3 Canard, a 11.7 Apache, right? And then you're like, but Koi, I have my scout vehicle, I have my medium tanks, my MBTs. Well, a 7.7 wheeled vehicle is not going to be an appropriate scout vehicle, especially at the battle rating, just because, well, it's not going to be much help to you. Everything is faster, everything has a better pen, everything is just better in every sense pretty much because it's a higher battle rating. And sure, there's exceptions to this rule, right? We have some very powerful vehicles that are very meta at their BRs and can definitely handle themselves at higher battle ratings. But for the most part, bringing any of those low tier vehicles to top tier just isn't going to cut it. So if you've made the mistake of purchasing a premium vehicle at a higher battle rating, again, this is what happens to a lot of new players. They see something super cool and decide, I'm going to buy that. Personally, I did that when I first started playing the game, and while it made me almost quit the game, I stuck around and started grinding up from the lower BRs without using that premium. So it'll be difficult, but you can recover. Moving into tip number 6 and 7. These two are very similar, so we're just going to be throwing them together for this one, and that's going to be binding a laser rangefinder and thermal optics. Now, a lot of people, this may be obvious too, especially if you've been playing at a BR where you get access to these things for more than a month, right? But you would be surprised at just how many people I've met that have been playing for a while or are newer to the game who have not bound these. Now, if you're one of these players that has no idea what I'm talking about or does and just didn't know how to set these things up, well, it's a very quick and easy fix. You can simply do this by going into your controls, looking up night, which will pull up the night vision mode. And this may confuse a lot of people. It confused me at first when I was looking for this setting, but its night vision mode works for your night vision imaging through your optic as well as the thermal. So I bind this to mouse button 4 just because that works easy for me and it's easy to reach there. The next thing we're going to be looking up is going to be range, which will pull up the range finder. I bind this to mouse button 5 because, again, you want it to just be there where you can quickly press a button and have it there when you need it, just so you're not fumbling around on your keyboard looking for the right binding when you need it. Moving into tip number 8, and this one is more recent than most, and some of you older players might not know this, but maybe you won't find it that useful. I know that many new players could definitely find this extremely useful when it comes to learning how to use new types of weapons that they might unlock on newer vehicles. This will mostly help with aircraft, trying to figure out how to use TV-guided weapons, laser-guided bombs, or just air-to-air missiles and radar missiles. So if you actually go into the modifications for the vehicle, you can see there's a lot of little test drive things underneath all of the different weapons and that you can unlock on the vehicle. And this will, if you click on that button, will put you into a little tutorial that shows you what kind of buttons you need to press to activate certain seeker heads, radar modes, etc. to use these new weapons that you're unlocking, which can be super helpful if you're a new player. I know when I first started out playing 2 years ago, they didn't really have these things for us. So I had to watch a lot of videos on YouTube to try and figure out something very simple like that. And I think this would just make it a whole lot easier for any new players who are learning and just starting to get into top tier, especially when it comes to air. Moving into tip number 9, we're going to be looking at ammunition. And not ammo racks this time, but more so what type of shell you should be using and what's the difference between each kind of shell in the game. Obviously, up at top tier, you're going to be using a lot of sabot darts, fin-stabilized rounds, and that's pretty much going to be the majority of what you shoot. Occasionally, maybe some high explosive to blast through the roofs of cupolas, but it's more of something you got to worry about at lower tiers where there's a more diverse array and option of ammunition types. So, for example, let's look at the Super Hellcats ammo types. We can see this APCR round that it carries that is very tempting, especially to newer players with how much armor penetration it has. But don't be deceived as a new player, these rounds are not very good. They have no explosive filler, meaning you're going to have to be hitting crew members rather than just aiming for weak spots because you don't have the explosive filler to knock out the whole crew in one shot. Not even 2 most of the time, if we're being quite frank. Now, if we look at M82 shot in comparison to the APCR shell, we can see that we have a lot more explosive filler and just overall a lot better shrapnel that's going to be flying around inside the crew compartment when you penetrate a vehicle. And sure, it has a lot less penetration, but you're going to be doing a lot more damage at the end of the day and having a lot more satisfying games rather than getting really angry and wondering why your tank isn't doing anything to the enemy even though you're penetrating them. Moving into our final tip of the day, that being number 10. This one does not really have anything to do with game mechanics or settings, but rather just something that will improve the overall experience that you have with this game. And that would be make sure to play this game with friends if you have any, right? Let's say you don't have anybody to play War Thunder with. Well, I will be leaving a link down in the description for my Discord that you can join and meet like-minded people that are learning how to play this game and find somebody to tag along with. Because what I believe is if I wasn't playing with my friends when I first started playing War Thunder, my experience would not be anywhere near as good as it was, because when you're working together and you're playing alongside other people, you tend to learn a lot of things. Not only that, Sometimes it's just fun to play a game with other people. For example, you don't have to take it as serious or focus on the grind when you're messing around with some other people and just having fun with the game. And that's what the most important part is about War Thunder. It's not about the grind. It's not about racing up to top tier or being the best. It's about having fun at the end of the day, because that's why we play video games. That's why we enjoy playing them. And if you're not enjoying playing it, why are you playing the game? With that said, guys, I hope you found this video useful. I just wanted to list 10 things that I notice new players tend to forget or miss when starting this game. And with that, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your week, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, everyone.